On this episode of China Uncensored, what was it like during the Tiananmen Square massacre? Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be in the middle of a massacre? If you have, that's really twisted. But wonder no more. Recently, China historian and former correspondent for the London Observer newspaper, Jonathan Mirsky, sat down with NTD and shared his story of what it was like in Beijing between the night of June 3rd to the next day. I received permission from both parties to show Mirsky's interview here, and one thing was clear. They had no idea what was coming.
Until that night of the 3rd, we all thought it was wonderful. We thought this was 6 weeks of people about to overthrow the communist regime in China. We were very excited by all this. We weren't tense at all. It was the only time in my many years in China that I was ever really happy.
But on the night of June 3rd, something changed.
On that night, I was watching the crowds as usual. I'd been in the square every day and many nights since the 17th of April, and we never thought anything would happen, no police, no army, and then all of a sudden, at about 11 or 12 at night, the army began to come into the square, and they began to shoot people and beat people up, and I got in the way of the Wujing, the armed police, by accident, so they beat me up, they knocked out these teeth and these teeth up here, fractured my arm and gave me a concussion, and then I left the square. That was on the night of the 3rd.
And that might have been the end of it right there for him.
When the Wujing were beating me up, I thought they would kill me. When the Wujing beat people and they fell to the ground, the officer then shot them. So I thought, well, in a minute now I'm going to fall down and then he's going to shoot me.
Fortunately for him, Robert Thompson, then reporter for the Financial Times, pulled him away and they left the square together. But the next day didn't get any better. Mr. Mirsky went back to the square with hundreds of people, parents of demonstrators who had not come home. They saw smoke coming out of the square and some thought the army was burning the bodies of students.
And then there was an officer there with a lot of soldiers, and he told these people to go away. And he was going to count to 5, and if they didn't go away, he would open fire. So nobody did anything. So he counted to 5, and then the soldiers fired into the air. And then he said, next time we're going to fire at you. So numbers of people fell down, including me. I lay down on the grass at the edge of Chang'an Avenue, and I shouted at these people that the soldiers were using real bullets. But there was so much noise going on, and anyway, I was a foreigner. Why should they pay attention to me? And then the soldiers fired into this crowd of parents, and they shot down a great many of them. And a few minutes later, an ambulance arrived from the Xiehe Hospital, from the Peking Union Hospital, where, by coincidence, my father had been in 1934. And the doctors and nurses got out of this ambulance, this white van, in their white smocks and hats, and began to try to help the people on the ground, and then the soldiers shot down the doctors and nurses as well. Quite a lot of people saw that happen.
Mirsky saw a lot of killing on the morning of June 4th. At one point, the man standing right next to him, touching his arm, was shot dead by the army. And what was the Communist Party's response to all the killing?
Well, the Chinese government said no shots were fired, no one was killed, almost immediately afterwards. And the story then became that what they referred to as criminal elements and counter-revolutionaries attacked the police and the army and killed numbers of policemen and numbers of soldiers. So that if any shots were fired at all, they were purely for the defense of the people who were being attacked by the counter-revolutionary elements. It's a complete lie.
And that lying has never stopped.
What the Communist Party does about Tiananmen and about all of its violence beginning in 1949 against landlords, then the anti-rightist movement in the late 50s, then the starvation of 59-61, then the counter-revolution, they obscure and lie about what happened, and that's what they're doing about Tiananmen. And the thing that occurred to me this morning was, it's as if the present German government said that to discuss what happened in Germany between 1930 and 1945 is absolutely not to happen, and that people who bring these things up will be imprisoned. But instead, in Germany, it is illegal to deny that there was a Holocaust. And children are taught accurately in Germany about what happened. So there are other ways, but the German government confronts this. China, I don't want to say China, the party in China cannot face it, and they don't want to hear about it.
But let's all make sure they still hear about it. Thanks again to Mr. Jonathan Mirsky for allowing China Uncensored to use this interview. Help spread the word by sharing this episode and subscribe to China Uncensored for more about all the things the party tries to cover up. I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.